City of Gumbel, the City Council of the City of Gumbel City, Texas will meet in a special meeting in City Hall Council Chambers located 1716 West Main Street, Gumbel City, Texas on Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. Actually, this meeting is on YouTube video. And the first item of business is roll call from Ms. Rankin. Start, please.
Rankin here.
Mr. Yalls.
Yaw's here.
Ms. Mullins.
Mullins here.
Mr. Wyrick.
I'm here.
Mr. Aiello. Mr. Aiello didn't join us today, doesn't look like. Do we have any citizen comments, Janet?
No, sir.
Thank you. I'll skip that. Public access to this meeting will be limited to teleconference. The public may access this meeting on YouTube. And we'll go ahead and go into new business. Item 1A, discuss and/or take action to approve the CDBG-MIT application draft for posting to begin 14-day public comment period as required by the Texas General Land Office. Mr. Arnswald, would you brief us on that, please, sir?
Would you like a motion first?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to take action to approve the CDBG MIT application draft for posting the period required by the Texas General Land Office.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Arnswald, would you brief us, please, sir?
Yes, this is part of the process. Council approved several council meetings ago to engage into a CDBG block grant for floodwater improvements in the city. Members of Mundo and Associates Engineering, the street department, as well as the company doing the grant for us come up with a proposal. We have an approximate to the city in the proposal projects that they have identified overall cost for the grant on page, which is after page 10 of 10, which lists the total project amount of $4,928,058.07, which would require a matching funds from the city of $49,280.58. Mr. Schaff is present on our Zoom call to answer any questions regarding the draft proposal. We have to get the approval from council on the draft proposal so that it could be posted to meet the state and federal requirements of public posting for 14 days.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or concerns?
There was one question I did have perhaps Mr. Is it Schiff?
Chef, yes, ma'am.
If maybe you might know the answer. I was wondering if we have using this, well, I guess their estimates or their bids or whatever they are, will Mundo have errors and omissions insurance?
That's a question I think for Joe. I'm not familiar with that, but Joe, you want to weigh in on that, or?
Yes. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. We have errors and omission insurance on all of our work. Excuse me. To the limits required by the grant, which I believe is 1 million per occurrence, 2 million aggregate. I think that's the limit, but that's what we have. So we either meet or exceed the requirements for professional liability insurance.
Okay, and then you would also have builder's risk?
Well, we would not, because we won't actually construct. We are the engineers. So we'll design it and we'll prepare the bidding documents. We, along with Trailer Associates, Stacy, will assist the city in the bidding process, in offering you the recommendation for award, and then we'll oversight the construction that is performed by, in this case, probably several contract packages, several.
Sure, we had some kind of errors and omissions, so that's great.
Absolutely. Although we don't make any errors.
Famous last words.
Any further questions or concerns?
Jeff, when we last spoke about this, you gave a very simple, very short overview of what exactly was the plan for this, what was the project, and how we qualified for it. Just for the historical record purposes, would you mind just kind of repeating what you told us last time, what this project is about, and how we qualified for it again?
We qualify for this as, I think, was that asked for me?
Yes, Jeff Arnswald.
We qualify for this as part of, I believe it's a 2016 federal disaster declaration. The city of Gun Barrel City qualifies inclusion, our county, and we are attempting to utilize some of that grant fund money. I believe there's $4.3 billion that was still available that had not been utilized. And we have gone out and identified, we have many areas in the city that could use some flood control upgrades. During this process, you know, as we move forward, I think we have 10 of them identified, which amounts to the total $4.9 million that we're asking for. So it really is to provide the city with the opportunity to do work that we would not normally have the funding resources to complete on our own.
Did we maintain a lower amount just so that our matching grant would not, our matching funds would be low? Or could we add more to that?
You
The
could add
grant
more to it.
The minimum amount of the grant is $3 million with a maximum of 10 million.
Right.
So we had to have at least a $3 million need in order to qualify for the grant. And we can utilize street sales tax money for this because it does involve upgrades to the streets as well. So this money would not have to come out of the general fund. This is money, the $49,000 matching would be money that we would normally be spending on roads anyways. So we would just take that out of the street sales tax fund. It would not need to do any budget adjustment to come up with the revenue from the general fund. It will come out of the street sales tax.
The reason I was asking that is that there are two other areas in our city that in the past few years we've had to address because of flooding and water getting into homes. And I didn't see them on this particular grant. So I wondered if there's something we want to look at in that regard, or just go with what we've got.
We utilized the street department as well as Mr. Mundo. They drove around the city and identified what they believed were the 10 most critical areas. I'm sure that there could be upgrades in just about any part of our city if we wanted to go to that extent. But I think they took a lot of time and effort to identify the 10 most critical areas that would be most affected by improvements. And those were the 10 that they addressed in the CDBG grant proposal. I'm sure we could find areas throughout the city that could use just as much upgrade. But
the two areas that I'm thinking about actually required the city going out and putting pumps into people's homes. I mean, it was so severe, the city was having to help them out. So to me, that might want to be reviewed before we submit.
Jeff, are we not under a time crunch as far as getting this documentation submitted?
We are, and that's the purpose of this special meeting, is it has to be done today. And there's time.
All right.
The real areas should have been brought up, when we first brought this to council.
Well, I just didn't realize what I was going to be getting and when, so I'm sorry.
Jana, may I speak a moment?
Certainly, please go ahead.
I think Stacy from Trailer and Associates, Stacy Schaff, he can explain it better, but the grant was limited to low to moderate income areas of the city. So I'm sure there's areas of the city, such as over in Willowwood as an example, that have issues, but they do not qualify as low to moderate income areas based on the government's measures. And so they're not in this program. Now, Stacy could probably, uh, explain that better.
That does really pretty well put it. Make it does make the point. We have to meet certain national program objectives for this type of funding in order for it to be eligible, and one of those is the 51% minimum threshold of low to moderate income individuals that would benefit from these, from this funding in the form of the projects that are being funded. So the areas that were selected fall within the low to moderate income threshold areas based on the census maps. And that's what GLO wants us to use is the low to moderate income areas. If there's a citywide low to moderate income of 51% or greater, then they want us to be able to use the census information to to gauge that and record it, and so that's what we're doing. So the areas, there are a lot of areas I'm sure that have a greater, that have the need, and a lot of areas that you all could equally do the work on, but we have to be able to stay within the areas for this kind of funding to get the funding. In terms of being able to meet that low to moderate income criteria. So I hope I didn't muddy that up too much, but the specific projects, the location sites are all within the low to moderate, the 51% LMI. And so that's where we kind of landed. We had to take out a couple of locations because they were not within there, within that area. They were not going to fall within, the LMI that is required. Sometimes we have areas that we don't know if they're going to fall within an LMI, 51% or greater. We can always go out and survey, but that takes time for one, and we don't have that kind of time right now because of the time, the sensitivity of the application period. And then also, if we already know that it's going to be above the LMI threshold, then there's no point even surveying it because it won't even matter. In fact, it will count against what we already have. So because we have the citywide LMI of 51.2429%, we're going with that because the city already qualifies for the LMI. That is the national objective. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I got a question too. Under what you're talking about here is for roads, and it sounds like for roads only. How does that impact the water that's coming off the roads that's going down I want to say the creek, and the creek is flooding homes? Does that cover that into something there, or is that some other type of grant?
Jeff, I'll let you take that. I believe it. I mean, that's part of the runoff. I guess I will say this. Ron, that's part of the runoff issue, and certainly what we're doing is going to help that runoff. So, Joe, you might want to weigh in more on how that's going to be affected, the runoff.
Right. What we have done at each of the, at one time we had 12 locations, including 2 over in the northeast development area. Those 2 were not in they did not qualify for LMI, so we removed them. But in each of those, of the 10 that qualified, we looked at the entire area and to determine where the flow was coming from, what the issues were, not just a pipe being undersized, but when we do the design, how big does that pipe have to be? Do we have to add some additional pipes down the road or up the road? Do we need gutter improvements? And then we also improved the road through that area as well. If it was a little bit too low, try to raise it up, recognizing adjoining driveways and all of those kinds of impacts. The 10 areas that we're addressing in this program, whatever the issues are today, notwithstanding errors and omissions insurance, I'd like to say that if the city is funded, 2 years from now, you will not have those issues, because this program will, in those 10 areas, they should do the job.
Thank you. Any further questions or concerns?
Is this a 2-year program? Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if we get in there and we find there's some cabling or water lines or anything else that are old and unrecorded, that will deter how fast we get it done. So I guess we have some kind of an alternative plan for those kinds of situations.
Ma'am, we recognize part of the process will be utility locations, identifications, and then working with each of the owners of those utilities, like the water district on the water lines, to either support, protect, what have you, during construction. On the one hand, this type of construction is fairly simple, so it's very well practiced. A lot of people do it. If the utility companies cooperate in their normal manner, it should not be an issue. Now, there's always a chance for some unforeseen big issue with maybe a major water line, sewer line, but we don't expect any of that at this time.
Okay, well, our trenches run through Encore easements. So I'm just wondering how many easements we're going to have to get permissions on.
I don't believe that we'll really have to do any, because we're staying within the city right of way with these improvements and repairs. And where the water leaves the right of way and goes through a natural drainage easement, then with respect to the roadway and what have you, prior to that point, and doing the proper rip-wrapping and what have you, so that when it discharges then back into the natural waterway, it's proper. I don't believe that we're going to have to get any easement. We may have to get some permission from some folks to temporarily go on their property. That shouldn't be a problem. None of it is mandatory. We can do everything that as we know it now, we'll be able to do everything within the city right away.
Any further questions?
I have a question. For the 2 projects that are on Welch Lane, how will traffic be rerouted since there's no other available streets nearby?
I can respond. In this program we have, if you were to look at all the detailed sheets, which I'm not expecting you to do, but believe me, on the Welch Lane tabulation, actually on every one of them, we have provisions for automatic one-way signaling, so that half of the street can be done at a time. So at no time does a street have to be closed. Now, if there's an alternative, when you get into that detailed design, if there's an alternative street pattern that would facilitate shutting down the construction area completely, then we'll look at that. And of course, the city would have to agree. But in no case do any of the streets have to be closed. They can all be done a portion at a time, and that's the way we've put it together.
Very good. Thank you.
Mullins, I've already had discussions with the street superintendent about future plans. We alternate routes. Unfortunately, all property we don't have to work some kind of arrangement and agreement with those property owners. It's not something we've actually gotten to the point where we've actually formally come up with a plan, but we have come up with alternative ways to get out, because Welch Lane's going to need more than just this flood control issue. At some point, that roadway is going to have to be addressed, and whether that's this year, next year, or the following, there has to be a way to divert traffic out of that area to an alternate route, because you can't do major upgrades to that roadway one lane at a time. Maybe you'll do flood control upgrades, but the road itself is going to need to be torn out and completely redesigned and reconfigured.
I agree. Thank you.
Any further concerns?
I just want to say that I thought it was an excellent application. I was pleased to see what all you had done and the amount of work that went into it. So thank you for that.
All right. Okay, Ms. Rankin, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ms. Mullins, how do you vote?
Yes,
Mr. Yawls, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Mr. Wyrick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, item number 2, discuss and/or take action to approve a citizens participation plan as required by the Texas General Land Office for the CDBG MIT program. Mr. City Manager?
you need a motion.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to take action to approve a citizen participation plan as required by the Texas General Land Office.
Do I have a second? Second. Have a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Ms. Rankin, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ms. Mullins?
yes,
Mr. Yawls?
Yes.
Mr. Wyrick?
Yes.
Item 1C, discuss and/or take action to approve an update to the city's financial policies to ensure they are compliant with federal regulations in accordance with the CDBG MIT program requirements. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve an update to the city's financial policies, compliant with the federal regulations in accordance with CDBG MIT program.
May I have a second? A motion and a second. Discussion?
I did have a question about, on small purchases, it says, what is an adequate number of qualified sources? I think we get into discussions about that now and then. If you get one bid or one item, let me say that again. If one person is giving you a cost on it, maybe 2 people give you a cost on it, is that a number of qualified sources? It's vague in the description. And
Right.
this is the small purchases of $50,000 or less. Does it matter if we get just one cost on it?
Actually, if you're asking me,
Anybody?
Please go ahead, Mr. Schiff.
yeah, as far as GLO is concerned, they want to see more than one. Even if it's small purchase procurement, they're going to push back if it's more. If it's just one bid, they're going to want to see at least 2 or more. So that's just part of GLO's stipulations. So TDA is not like that, and some of the other agencies are not like that. But when we get down to to GLO, they kind of follow a different format. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Well, will the city manager make that decision?
I think the decision we made in conjunction with the people running the project as well. I think sometimes the lowest price isn't always the best option. I think we have to weigh each individual circumstance, and I think the city manager can make that decision, but I think it will be based on input from the people involved in managing the projects as well, the engineers as well as the people actually doing the construction.
So you would have oversight over the project as sort of the city's representative, or will it be Shannon?
It will be me.
You, okay.
Amen. Yes.
And then on the sealed bids, it said a sufficient response time. What is typically a sufficient response time?
I believe the state requirement, I believe, is very close to 21 days. I don't think it's
2
20.
weeks.
I think it's like 20, but we essentially always go by 3 weeks minimum.
Okay. And it also said that bids must be opened publicly. And in the past, our city's been a little negligent in that regard. So I would just like to make note, we will have to open these publicly.
I don't think we've been negligent, Ms. Rankin. I'm pretty sure
I
that
agree. We have
Well,
posted it
Well,
opening.
it was before y'all.
Okay. Well, that's long ago history. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm just bringing it up so we don't repeat it.
Well, I don't think we've repeated it. I think we've been very diligent about posting that information. We have opened them in a public venue and we have encouraged anyone who wanted to participate to join us.
Great, I love it.
Any further comments or questions?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is the right place for it, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. The bridge projects that we've, experienced some revenue from, going over the lake, will we expect any revenue, I don't know, input, I guess is the right word, from, with regard to these local purchases that would be taking place for these projects as well?
I think a lot of it will depend on where they purchase the materials. I think that will be dependent on the contractors who are awarded the bid, where they would normally receive their equipment and their materials to complete their end of the project.
Thank you.
We may not have some of the material available within the city limits that is necessary to complete the project.
Any other
I
questions?
have just a final note. The guidelines that were in this and that we're making a part of our city's procurement policies, this will remain in place for all projects going forward. Am I correct? It's not just for this particular project.
Correct.
Okay.
It's addressing some of the deficiencies. It's been basically updating to whatever's most current. And I think we would do that with any grant. We would be required to ensure that our policies are consistent with what is currently being applied
Yeah,
at the federal and state level.
I think it's a great process.
Any other questions or concerns? Ms. Rankin, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ms. Mullins?
Yes,
Mr. Yalls?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt? Thank you. Item 1D, discuss and/or take action to approve an update to the city's procurement policies to ensure they are compliant with federal regulations in accordance with the CDBG MIT program requirements. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion
go ahead.
Go
to
ahead.
update the city's procurement policies to ensure they are compliant with the federal regulations in accordance with CDBG MIT program requirements.
Have a second? Have a motion and a second. Discussion? No discussion? Ms. Rankin, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ms. Mullins?
Yes,
Mr. Yalls?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 1E, discuss and/or take action on incentive and/or retention financing for a business as deliberated in executive session on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to take action on an incentive or retention financing for a business as deliberated in executive session Tuesday, September the 22nd, 2020.
Have a second? All right, any further discussion on that, even though it was an executive session? Thank you. Ms. Rankin, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ms. Mullins?
yes,
Mr. Yalls?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all attending the meeting today. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
motion,
Sure.
We